we'll be talking about that are confirmed to participate so far. Robert, how many people are confirmed?
We have about 5 people, 6 people confirmed to participate.
Oh, I hope all of them are able to join. And I know I actually don't know most of the people on this comes to Toastmasters. I left just as we were beginning to implement pathways. And so it's really exciting for me to be in a Toastmasters meeting, regardless of whether it's a training or anything, that we are using Zoom. It's the coronavirus has changed everything. So it's interesting times for everyone, including myself. So Robert, I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know whether all of you can see. Share screen. Don't know if you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
You can see as okay, it's like I mentioned, I've not done this in a while. So first things first, we just need to introduce what Tall Tales is. I hope what's displayed at the moment is what Tall Tales is all about. And Tall Tales is a story with unbelievable elements that are related to real life or not. They can be fictional, they can be real, but most times it's something really exaggerated. It's something that is out there. It's a creative way of telling a story that no one has heard before. And most people like to tell it as they go, but for the purposes of Toastmasters, you must have a certain structure and way of telling a story from beginning to end. So Tall Tales actually began as campfire stories by American pioneers, and so far they have been used as creative ways for children to tell nice stories and to build up their creativity. So sorry, I don't know whether you can still hear me. There seems to be something in my computer. Just a minute.
You're audible. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Good, I'm back. I was just refreshing something here. They're often told in a way that makes the narrator sound like they were there. So if I was to give an example, I'd say, did I ever tell you guys of the time that my dad met Evander Holyfield? No, I didn't. Well, my dad and I were going to school, and in the midst of traffic, we saw the gigantic figure that was Evander Holyfield. Now remember, this was the 90s. He was still famous. Everybody still knew who he was. And Evander walked up to us and asked us, "Why are you guys on the wrong lane?" My dad looked at him and asked him first, "Mr. Evander Holyfield, it is a pleasure to meet you. I am a Kenyan. I've always been a boxing fan." And Evander told him, "I don't care. You're blocking my way." And to Evander's surprise, my dad got out of the car and stood a whole 2 feet taller than Evander and dwarfed him in his likeness. Now, Evander, being the boxer that he was, looked straight into my dad's eyes, looking up as almost looking into the sky, and told him, "I have knocked down bigger giants than you." Then I began to toss and turn as I waited to see my father either dismantle Evander Holyfield or be dismantled by this man that I had seen knock out countless guys. And as I tossed and turned, my wife shook me and asked me, "Why are you snoring?" So basically, Tall Tales is a tale that is really exaggerated. Something like that you really exaggerate and you use certain elements to draw in your audience. from a Toastmaster's perspective, your speech should be about 3 to 5 minutes in length, and it should comply with the general rules of the contest. And it has an additional twist in that you have the subject of the total speech must be exaggerated, improbable in nature, and have a theme or a plot. Again, as Toastmasters, we don't just speak for the sake of speaking. So your speech must lead somewhere and must be trying to tell a certain story. Your events must tie together. All this should be told in a humorous way. If you have any props, you're allowed to use them. And most importantly, it should be told in a way that still engages the audience. So one of the best ways to get at what Tall Tales is all about is looking at the judging criteria. Now, the judges have, I'm sure you've already seen the form. For those of you that haven't, I encourage you to go look at the rule book, look at the evaluation forms, just get a hint of what is required of you and how you shall be assessed. But what will the judges be looking for? First, they will be looking for content. As they say in the modern world, content is king. However, people also add that context is King Kong. So in the context of a Toastmaster speech at a Tall Tales contest, what is content supposed to look like? Judges will be looking at your speech development. That is the way in which you put your ideas together so that the audience can understand you. And a good Tall Tales speech immediately engages your audience's attention, then smoothly builds them up towards a climax or a conclusion. Again, we are Toastmasters. You must be taking us somewhere with this story. Sometimes the purpose of the story is just to entertain. Sometimes it is to inform. But for the purposes of the Tall Tales, you must have some semblance of flow. So it's not stand-up comedy. So you must know where you're taking us with your speech because you're a Toastmaster. Now, the next criteria, which is your way of delivery, has the highest marks, which is about 55% of what the judges will be looking at, and that is your speaking techniques. So these are skills such as exaggeration, irony, a good pun here or there, humor, and maybe a surprise or twist, something the audience didn't see coming. So that when they hear what you are saying and they get to the end, sometimes you just put in a twist to surprise them. So as you build up your speech, you must know you're taking us somewhere. And one of the best ways the best way to start a story sometimes is with a joke, but one of the best ways to finish a story, nobody ever talks about finishing a story, is with a good old-fashioned twist or a pun or irony. But throughout your speech, you are encouraged to use most of these tactics in making sure that your audience is not only just engaged, but remains engaged. Now, these techniques in Tall Tales must be skillfully incorporated into the tale so that it flows smoothly. The second thing that will be looked at under delivery is your physical presence. Now, I know in COVID times, we'll be doing this on video. So towards the end of this presentation, I'll give you a few tips on what you should do to make sure you are A, visible, B, audible, and C, that we can see you when you move. So it's very easy when you set up your camera or computer or whatever device that you'll be using on that day to know that, oh yes, I have framed myself, people can see me. But if you have movements, you must also take that into account. So the judges will also be looking at your body language, how you tell the story. And stories that are prone to exaggeration have a lot of movement. They have a lot of, sometimes they have props. Sometimes they require you to move around or do some actions. So make sure even as you prepare for your speech and you set up your camera or whatever device you'll be using, that you leave enough room for you to move around so that the judges know that they can judge that. The next thing is voice. How do you sound? Your voice is what will carry your message. It must be flexible, moving from one tone to another. You must employ some aspects of pitch. You must also emphasize things here and there. And you must use your volume to sometimes say something that is not really what the audience expect, but the way you carry your voice up and down, the way you change your volume, that also adds to your speech. And the intonation of what you're saying, depending on what you're talking about, will also be key. And this is what the judges will be looking at. Then I think the final judging criteria is language. And this is the appropriate use of language. Don't just put a word in there for the sake of putting it in there. It may sound funny, it may look good on paper, but make sure that that word has a purpose and that you choose your words and phrases in a way that tell your story and also endear you to the judges. Now, language should promote a clear understanding of the thoughts that you have and fit the occasion precisely. So you cannot be telling a sad story with words that seem to be very uplifting or very funny at the same time. You can make fun of a sad situation, but your choice of words and phrasing must also be appropriate. So the choice of words is also what judges will be looking at, the manner in which you phrase your story. Now, next, we need to look at the flow. Now, traditionally, before COVID, pre-COVID, people would be in the same room. So it was not hard for you to sort of follow the meeting. Unlike other contests where people are required to leave the room or not be within the same forum or platform, Tall Tales allows the contestants to sit in together with the audience and the judges to listen in. Now, in COVID times, you will all be in some form of Zoom meeting. If I'm not wrong, Robert will be using Zoom. So the contest and the contestants will be required to be online 30 minutes before the contest starts. Now, this is to allow for the contest chair to gauge how you've positioned your camera. Are you audible, so that we don't have any hitches when we're doing the speeches, and also to allow for some form of balloting so that we know what order the speakers will speak in. Now, this balloting, I am assured by the more tech-savvy members, such as Robert, that there are ways to do it online, but so you can do some sort of lottery where you will be able to know who will speak in what order, and the contest chair will communicate that to everybody who will be participating on that day, so that you know how the order will be picked and how it will be done. So the contest chair will have flexibility to know whether they should do this before the meeting or on the day of the meeting. Either way, there will be some sort of balloting. So the contestants will be told to either cast lots or enter their names into a software, and it will generate the order in which they'll speak. Now, once that is done, and before the meeting, as the meeting starts, the order in which the people will speak will be displayed on the meeting, so that at least even the judges know. We have about, Robert, 6 judges. We have 6 judges.
6 judges and one tiebreaker judge.
Yes, so we'll have 6 judges and a tiebreaker judge. The tiebreaker judge may not even be known to the other judges, so we try to keep it as independent as possible. And the reason we have a tiebreaker judge is we have an even number of judges, which is 6. So if they are torn, maybe they vote 3-3 in regards to who the winner is, we need someone to break the tie, and that will be the role of the tiebreaker judge, who will remain anonymous, unknown both to the contestants and to the judges, but only to the contest chair. We'll also have a timer. Now, for those of us who've been away, such as myself, I wondered how the timer will utilize their tools, but the contestants will be required to pin the timer onto their device. So when you log into Zoom, there's a way to pin the timer. So the timer will have their own independent tool that has been created by Toastmasters, so that they're able to time your speech. They will start timing your speech the minute you begin to speak. So this then raises the question of how will you know when your time is almost up or how well you're doing on time. They will still use the ordinary signals that we have at Toastmasters. Green when you are 3 minutes into the speech, and yellow when you're 4 minutes into the speech, red when you're 5 minutes into the speech, at which point you'll have only 30 seconds to wind up. Robert informs me that there will be no bell. Most contests, they don't use the bell. So kindly watch your time, rehearse your speech ahead of time, time it, see how long it takes, factor in the time that we'll have for people to laugh. This was in ordinary times, but now because everybody else will have muted their mic, I am not quite sure how you'll know whether the jokes have landed. Even now, I don't know whether I have any jokes that I've told that have landed, but by faith, I know I've told some good jokes and they have landed somewhere and someone is laughing somewhere. So audience participation, we've not quite cracked how that works. And for obvious reasons, we shall not have the audience's mics on during the presentation, because as you are aware, during these COVID times in Zoom meetings, people are holding the meetings at home or in various places where there may be other distractions or other noises. So it may be hard to control whether you can hear them or not. So once the contest starts, the contest chair will introduce the first speaker and their speech title. Now, before you speak, before he starts introducing you, you will see, once you pin the timer on your screen, you will see the green signal that tells you that it's almost your time to start. Then the contest chair will ask if you are ready. And at this time, you should have already switched on your mic so that the contest chair can hear you, and be standing in position where you will be presenting the speech. And once the introduction is done, you can start your speech, at which point the timer will start timing you. And as earlier mentioned, they'll show the green at 3 minutes, and they will show the yellow at 4 minutes, red at the 5th minute. Once the speech is over, the judges will have 1 minute to start their evaluation of the speaker, so they can quickly jot down how they are scoring the speaker. During that 1 minute, the next contestant should start getting ready, set up your camera, make sure you're standing in place, and you'll also be required to have pinned the timer on your Zoom. And once you pin the timer, 30 seconds before the end of that 1 minute, the timer will put their green signal, at which time you will switch on your mic. At the lapse of that 1 minute, the contest chair will ask you if you are ready, and you will respond and should be standing in place ready to make your speech. Then you will flow with it. Again, you will have to remember the signals and watch your time. And on, it will keep repeating. Now, once the contest is over, the judging will begin. This time we'll not have an audience vote like we've had in the physical meetings, but we'll only rely on what the judges say. So what do you need to remember? Now, we are in COVID times, no physical meeting. This means that the contest is essentially being done on video and online. So the first thing you must know is you must know that you will be standing for the entire duration of your speech. So you need to ensure that you position your camera to capture your body and your intended movement. So if you know you'll take 2 steps to the right and only 1 step to the left, make sure you position accordingly. If you know you'll take a step forward and it might interrupt with the way the judges see you, make sure that you've accounted for that when you set up your computer. Then you must make sure that you are visible. So make sure you're in a well-lit room and that you can be seen, and you don't have a busy or noisy background. By busy or noisy background, we mean anything that might distract from your speech. And as I have tried to caricature on the side of the screen, a lady is talking and their son just jumps into the screen. So make sure you're in a room where no one will disturb, at least for the duration of the speech. After your speech, I'm sure since you'll have the ability to mute or to switch off your video, that won't matter as much. But during the time that you'll be doing your speech, make sure there are no distractions behind you. Your background is a neutral color. It's not busy. It does not distract from your speech, unless it is, of course, a prop. Then you'd be allowed to have it in the background. Then check your sound. Now you need to make sure that where you position your recording device, which will either be your phone or your laptop or tablet, you position it at a distance where where your voice is audible, so that you don't have to shout. And also, when you're playing with your vocal intonation, we can still hear you, both the audience and the judges. So make sure that you factor that in. And as I mentioned earlier, there will be 30 minutes before the contest, a meeting between the contestants and the contest chair, at which point they will check all of these elements. But even if we are going to check these elements, if you have not found a place to do it, that will not be the day to do it. So do that in advance so that on the day of, we are just adjusting. Then the final point that you need to remember is, I would recommend that you use your computer or tablet and not your phone, for the simple reason that if you're making your speech and someone calls you, your internet will disconnect and it will interfere with your speech. I have a lot of friends who I want not to call me when I'm making a presentation. I am not sure that my friends would comply or my family members would comply. They wouldn't know. And since you don't know who might call you, it could be a wrong number, it could be anything, then it's just advisable that you either use a device that you know will not receive a phone call during the time that you will be presenting your speech. This is especially true for all contestants. If you're very sure that you'll be making your speech on your phone, then I recommend, depending on the abilities of your device, you can try, and I advise you to try this after the meeting. Put your phone on flight mode and see if it can connect to the Wi-Fi. If that's possible, that's a good tip that I learned recently, that you can actually put your phone on flight mode and connect to Wi-Fi. Then if you're able to do that, it is easier to use your phone because you're very sure no one will call you during the time of the speech. And I think I've come to the end of my presentation. So I'm ready to take any questions, and I will be assisted by Robert in taking these questions. And as you can see, my lemur-faced self on your screens, ready to take your questions starting now.
Thank you very much, Henry, for that presentation. It was well structured and to the point. I welcome.
Make sure you're not in a room like the one I'm in, because I'm sure you need to scratch to reveal my face. Let me see if I can.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, I scratched it, it revealed me. So
yes, you'll definitely need a place that has more lighting than where Henry is. I will welcome questions. Please go ahead and just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, if I may go first. Hi, Henry, I'm Elishiba. Thank you so much for the presentation. I loved the what's his name? Holyfield.
yes.
Story. Evander, that was hilarious. So we were laughing even though you couldn't see our faces.
My jokes landed, okay.
It just landed. So I guess my question is, does it have like you said, the point of the tall tale is to entertain, can be to entertain or to make a point. Can it be so wild that like at the end of it, there's kind of no lesson to be learned from your tall tale?
Yeah, so again, we are Toastmasters. Our speeches must have purpose. So sometimes, well, a tall tale in its very nature is something unbelievable.
Yeah.
So for example, if you are trying to make fun of Kenyan society, you'd say, can you imagine a place where people eat roads? Can you imagine a place where people are eating PPEs? They are munching on PPEs. I saw a guy eat a mask. Not only did he devour one mask, but he devoured 25 masks. How, you might ask? Well, when they gave him 25,000 shillings to buy masks for a hospital, he put it on his M-Pesa and bought food for himself. So if you see my drift, that you can be funny, entertaining, and do something outrageous and still make a point. So as a Toastmaster, you're always encouraged to have a purpose for your speech. Where are you taking us? But entertainment is also a purpose.
Mm.
So if your aim is to entertain, just make sure that the judges know from the beginning, from the way you tell your story, that basically this person is taking us nowhere, but they are going to entertain us. So it's in the way you structure your speech, but you're encouraged to always have a purpose for your speech.
Okay. Then last
I hope that answers
question.
your question.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. And can there be animals?
Yes.
Like augurs, like the compositions we wrote in primary school.
Yes. Yeah. So even when we tell stories of ogres in our culture, we are trying to make sure children don't go into a forest. We tell them if you go into a forest, you will be eaten by ogres. So they still have a purpose. Even those stories, as entertaining as they were, they still had a purpose. Just make sure you have a purpose. I mean, I tried in my presentation to put funny things on the side, like a dog flying, that kind of thing.
Okay.
If it helps to drive your point home, use whatever stylistic device or imaginary animal creation, machination, out of words that can describe, but you get the point.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elishiba. We have a question from Peggy, who's asking, can you use anecdotes to help with exaggeration? Can you use anecdotes to help with exaggeration?
Most definitely, you can use anecdotes to help with exaggeration. As a matter of fact, we encourage anecdotes at Tall Tales Context, because the whole thing is about how wild can your story get, and it wouldn't get more wilder than a good anecdote. So yes, you're encouraged to use that, which is also a stylistic device, and it would earn you a lot of points with the judges. Any more questions?
I have a question. No, you go ahead first. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. I have a question on the. I'll be the timer on the costed, but you talked about the displaying the green card at the start of the meeting, at the start of the telltales.
Yes.
Yeah. How does that work? Do you have to display it till the start of the talk?
Let me answer that question. For technical issues with timing, I think I'll communicate separately. Let's just try and use this time for the content of the Tall Tales, but that we will be able to handle separately. So don't worry about that. I'll expound on it after this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ruthann, go ahead.
I'm also a timekeeper, so my question was also time related. But let me ask, you'll tell me if it's technical or not. During a previous contest, after each speaker was done, the judges will have 1 minute to deliberate between each of the speakers, and we'd kind of give them an inconspicuous signal when the 1 minute was over, so that we don't go over time and so that the next speaker can speak. So I don't know whether for this time, we can show a green card at 30 seconds and a red card at 1 minute so that the judges know their time is up and then the next speaker can start.
That is what Henry was alluding to, exactly what he was alluding to. 30 seconds to allow the next speaker to unmute themselves and position themselves ready to speak. So yes, you're correct. We'll use the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, and then all the speeches are 5 to 7 minutes in length.
3 to 5 minutes for Tall Tales.
Okay. Okay, so 3 green, 4 yellow, 5 red.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any tips on making our speeches more, like how can we exaggerate? Like what are some of the tips you can share with us to make it more humorous? Yeah.
Play with your words. Look for things that have size. So things like size you can play with. So or even names, the namings of your character. So you can, for example, say, in that story of Evander, you say, my father, known to me by my last surname, had also earned the nickname Jitu Kubwa. So you can play with words, you can play with size, you can say the gigantic figure that my father cut dwarfed everybody but me. You can just play with words. So just use words and also your actions to make it as outlandish as possible. So, for example, if you were to look for something that would be ridiculous, like say, formulate a Kenyan Avengers. So Luanda Magere, who would be like the Hulk. Say Wangare Maathai, who would have the powers to control nature. Lenana, who would probably be sort of like a Thor-like figure who would use, instead of having a hammer, would have a spear. So you can just be as creative as you can. And also your descriptions can be, can be as big and as unbelievable as possible. So remember, tall tales, you have two options. You can either choose to use a real story that you exaggerate, or you can create a fictional story that you exaggerate even more.
Thank you very much. I can see Evelyn has a hand up. Evelyn, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I came a little late. I was actually thinking our meeting starts at 7:30. But I don't know, Henry, if you were able to take us through the criteria for judging according to that slip, because I think even if we're exaggerating, there has to be like a clear flow of ideas so that it doesn't come out like, you're just taping things together, but it's actually a story that, oh, you did your presentation, that's good. Yeah, because I remember Alan, and I'm glad Alan is also here, when he was giving the story, and it was about life on Mars. But the way it came out is like I could relate with it. Even if it was outlandish, I could actually visualize that outlandish story being real. And maybe Alan at some point can share how he managed to get to the district championship as the winner with that outlandish story. But I like, Henry, also the styling of yours, because I like that humor makes the story even more interesting, because sometimes it can be so exaggerated until it's too much. Yeah, so I maybe you can take us through that if you hadn't gone through it. You're muted, Henry. Henry, you're muted.
Yes, so we've gone through the criteria of judging. We started with what a tall tale is, where it started. Then we went next to how it's perceived in Toastmasters. They reminded people that at the end of the day, Toastmasters carry themselves to a different or to a higher calling. So you must be taking us somewhere sometimes, and sometimes your purpose is just to entertain, and that's also okay. So basically 30% is content, 55% is delivery, and language is also important, your phrasing and how you use your language to take people through the story. So yeah, I'd already taken people through that. I think, Robert, I'll share this with you. You can share with everyone else, just as a simple guide. And I hope my lemurs will not distract everybody else. So yes, we'd gone through most of this. Yeah.
Thank
Actually, I think, oh yeah, you can share it from the comments. So let me try. And I think you can, I hope you'll be able to download. There it is, I've uploaded it onto the messages.
Thank you, Henry. We had another question from, another hand up from Wanjiro. Wanjiro, go ahead.
Thank you, Robert. Maybe could you advise on use of props or visual aids, or like even if you want to incorporate, say, PowerPoint into the speech? Thanks.
Okay, so As I mentioned, the positioning of your camera will be all important if you intend to use props. So you are allowed to use props, you are allowed to use visual aids. Just make sure that you've rehearsed with them ahead of time. And as we always encourage people, even before COVID, record yourself and watch it so that you know how the props came out, because it's the same way that will come out to the judges. And remember, you won't have the benefit of seeing yourself unless, if you are cheeky and clever enough, you will position the camera in front of a mirror so you can also see what people are saying. I would not encourage it because you might distract yourself if you are have as I don't know, mandevish as myself. You might start looking for other things, but we encourage that you use the props, but let them be appropriate, let them tie into the story, and make sure, since we are using a recording device of some sort, your computer or your phone, make sure that they are visible and that they have a purpose and they come out for the purpose that you intended them for. So for example, if I was to use this as my prop, if I keep doing this and you can't see it and it's out of frame and I say like this monkey, no one can see it. So make sure the framing of the props is appropriate and where it is. Yes, I think I have 2 of them. So if I was to use both of them, then I'd make sure that at least they're within the frame and they also do not constrict my movement. So you might try to use the props, and because you're using the props, try to squeeze yourself, so you may change your body language. So just record yourself first, see how much space you have to play with, then know how to use those props appropriately. And in a rhyme, yes, props appropriately. So yes. Any more questions?
Robert, just a comment. I think Evelyn had made reference to Alan to maybe share something. I don't know whether he's going to share that as well.
Linguist, Mr. Alan Aringo. I suppose it's the same Alan.
Yes, welcome, Alan.
Yes, Mr. Linguist. Do you have any tips since you've done this before?
Well, the only thing that I can say is I instead of at the expense of speaking too much, tomorrow I'm doing a tip session at Anchored. So perhaps I could invite you so you can see a different take. I really like the content that Henry has put out, and I don't want to water it down. I would prefer that you keep what Henry has said today. And if you can attend Anchored tomorrow, I think somebody should be able to send you, Henry, I don't know if you can share, you reach out to Bob or Gadoni, Beth Gadoni, the president, to send the link for the Anchored meeting tomorrow. What I really want to say is that I'm a big fan of visual aids. They're not easy to use, but they take your presentation to the next level. That's all I know. The moment you create a PowerPoint, and I'll be showing some samples of PowerPoints that I've used in the past tomorrow. So instead of coming in and saying so much, I prefer that we take what Henry has said and then maybe integrate it with what I'm going to share with Anchor tomorrow. And then maybe that can help your presentation to be complete. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. And I'd like to say, one of the most important questions that people raise is what's the difference between a tall tale and a humorous speech? A humorous speech has to make you laugh. That's the goal. A tall tale is not, you use humor as a vehicle to pass your message. I don't know, I hope I'm not confusing anyone. When I stand up to deliver a humorous speech, the goal is to make you laugh. But when I stand up to deliver a tall tale, what's important is the story, and the technique for relaying the story could be a humorous technique. That's not the goal. That is the technique. That's all I'd like to leave with you, but you're welcome to attend Anchored session tomorrow. Sorry about the and have a blessed evening, everybody.
Thank you. Robert, kindly coordinate and make sure people get that link. You can share it on the same group that we are on. I'm sure everybody will be able to get it. You can also share it on the same group, I hope.
Yes, I'll get it and share. And we'll also try and get a recording, which will help us to review.
I see a hand up. Is that Evelyn?
Sorry, I had not put it down.
Oh, okay. So I think actually, since there seems to be no more questions, Lee, you have participated in various contests, going all the way to becoming a champion. Aside from the tall tail end of this, what should someone expect when they are going through a contest? How should they prepare for it? How should they plan for it? Because there are things that apply to all contests that I'm sure you've learned that you'd like to share with some of the people here. Mr. Kanyago? Lee?
I think Lee's trying to switch on his camera. Let me help him as he continues. When he comes on, he can take over. But I think it's very critical to be prepared, really prepare, and have your, I think for him, for Tall Tales and others, you really have to perform. You have to demonstrate that you put in effort to deliver magic. So preparation is going to be key. So even as you're preparing, make it a real performance, not over dramatized. I like natural speakers, but with conveying the appropriate messaging through facial expressions, because you're still going to be judged on the basis of some of the things we learn in Toastmasters: facial expression, eye contact. They look at that as well. Gestures. And I guess when you're doing tall tales, and like Henry, you said, when you're demonstrating size or the extent of the exaggeration, I guess body language becomes a critical part. Not to look like a drama festival, make it as natural as possible, and that will come from good practice. Yeah, and just come in ready to win. Yeah, I think when the audience connects with you, when they see you've put in effort to entertain, to inform, whatever your purpose is. Yeah, so just put in that effort and deliver with confidence.
Oh, I see Lee has left. So if there are no further questions, I'd like to hand it over back to Robert. And thank you all for making time this evening. And I look forward to listening to your speeches and meeting the winner, who I'm sure is here all the way to district level, or however far this may go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry, for putting this together, for taking your time to prepare this session. I believe you will still be available to coach the people who are taking on this task. And I'd also like to request that you share the PowerPoint in the group for us to have as a reference. As mentioned by Alan, they are having a tip session tomorrow at Anchored. We also do have a session tomorrow, which is a social. So we will be requesting the recording of that session so that we can be able to share it with you. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight. As mentioned, the role takers will have a different session just to train them on some of the aspects of how they're going to be managing their competition. I don't take it for granted. I want to thank our VPE, and I also like to thank Henry, for the two people who were able to put this together, and for all of you for participating and for asking questions. This recording will be made available and will be posted in the group tomorrow. With that, I think we're within time. It said we spend about an hour. I'd like to then wish you a very good night and hoping to see you tomorrow in the social. Asanteni sana and good night. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.